to Really Legal. I'm attorney Ethan Bearman. Michael Cohen testimony yesterday and today was the cross-examination. I'll give you the good, the bad, and what's next. But more importantly today, I'm also going to talk to Dr. Allison Gill. You know her as Muller, She Wrote. Yes, she created that show. She's really an amazing person who has been all over the Trump travails since the Mueller report was getting released. She's been all over it. She has another show right now. It's my favorite. It's called Jack. She does that with former Deputy Director of the FBI, Andrew McCabe. That's once a week. She does a once a week show called Cleanup on Aisle 45 with Pete Strzok. And she has a daily show called The Daily Beans and a brand new Substack at mullershewrote.substack.com. Here's Dr. Allison Gill. Allison, I'm so glad that you have taken time to talk to us again here on Really Legal on the Really American Network. By the way, Mazel Tov, congratulations. Amazing that you actually got into the courthouse in New York City on Monday, May the 13th, 2024, to a Donald Trump's criminal trial. First off, how the heck did you get in? Did you have to beat somebody up? Did you, trip some journalists and shove them out of the way? I mean, how did that happen?
Well, it's been 8 years in the making, Ethan. So should I call you Esquire, Ethan Esquire, attorney at law, Professor Ethan? What?
Just Ethan is good. That's great. We know each other.
My buddy Ethan. So on Friday, I was in DC last week to do a panel for the Jack podcast at George Mason University Schar School of Government and Policy. I was about to fly home on Saturday, and we learned Friday night that Michael Cohen would be testifying on Monday. And I've been covering this since what we call the kitchen table days over here in the Leguminati Nation, which is the vast community of listeners of the Daily Beans, Muller, She Wrote, Jack, and all the Cleanup on Aisle 45. So I was like, oh, it's Cohen. It's the trial of the century so far. There will be, new trials of the century. Probably, well, not as soon as I would like, but there will be this century.
As soon as many of us would like, let's be clear.
Yeah, but I'd like to think they'll go this century. Then, I was close by. it's a 3-hour train, right? So I was like, I got to go try to get in. And so in one day, I made myself a MSW Media Press Pass. I contacted the New York courts press folks. I bought a train ticket. I changed my flight. I got a hotel, got some points lying around. So got a guest room at the very fancy Marriott hotel, just about a 10-minute walk from the courthouse. And I said I was going to try my best. I hired line sitters. I hired one for the general press line and one for the public line in case I couldn't get in on press for some reason. So I was hedging my bet. And the line sitter I hired for the general press line was first in line. So I got in first in line for general press for the Overflow. Got my, they call it the ticket, the little piece of paper with the court seal on it and the date stamped on it, and was rushed into the Overflow Room. I am surprised and thankful that I was able to be there to witness it. Especially on that day, and we'll talk a little bit about some of the evidence that came up. But it was very important to me, at least in my little personal journey of covering this, since it was being investigated by Robert Mueller. And it was truly incredible. But I also couldn't have done it without the help of all of the very supportive people in the press that were there. The folks at Lawfare, Anna Bauer, Ben Wittes, Tyler McBrien, the folks at Politico, Kyle Cheney and Erica Orden. Hugo Lowell from The Guardian helped out. Maggie Haberman, who was right next to me, first in line for the card-carrying people who had a reserve seat in the courtroom, she gave me a lot of advice on what to do, what not to do, what I could expect. There was Lawrence O'Donnell, who was very supportive. Norma Eisen stopped by. Jennifer Rubin, who, from MSNBC, saw me and ran across the street, gave me a big hug, said she was really happy to see me there, gave me a lot of really great advice. And encouragement. I got information about getting line sitters, and all of my friends that I've made in the, over the last 8 years in the press. It was really pretty. Adam Klasfeld helped out. Like, it was just this really incredible community of reporters. And so with their help and the help, of course, of the patrons of my program, people who subscribe to my Substack, so that I was able to get there, and it was just like this whole big giant group effort, and like all the stars aligned in the universe to allow it to happen. And it was a truly incredible gift of a day. And I'm very grateful that I was able to be there.
Yeah, you were part of history, literally. Again, you were absolutely at the forefront with Muller, She Wrote. For people who aren't familiar, on Twitter, Allison's primary handle is @Muller, She Wrote, and really was an absolute trailblazer in keeping the focus on what was really going on legally with Donald Trump, with the attempts to cover up what happened with the Mueller report. You were the right term is trailblazer. And so to see you be part of the history in person in New York just made me so happy. So happy to see that for you. So did any of Trump's people, did you catch their eye? Did they catch your eye? Did you go beat up Jason Miller? I'm just curious.
No, somebody said, tell Vance I don't like that guy. And I was like, Cy Vance hasn't been the DA for a long time. They're like,
oh, exactly.
JD Vance, Allison, JD Vance. I was like, okay, yeah. No, see, the way that they work it is when Trump and his little entourage come in and go out, we, the press, have to be in our overflow room with the doors closed. And it actually happens sometimes when on a break, if you get up to go to the restroom or whatever, if you're in the bathroom when Trump wants to leave or come back with his little entourage of people, they shut you in the bathroom. You cannot be in the hallway when they're there. So
is that because of the Secret Service, or is that because they don't want you interacting with the defendant?
Probably the latter. It's just part of their security measures. When we wait in line across the street, and then once they come and separate the three lines out, public, card carrying press, press overflow, general press, we all file in, we go through security on the first floor, then we all run to this bank of elevators and pile into elevators, go to the 15th floor. Once we're on the 15th floor, we have to go through security again. And then we are funneled into the overflow room, and that has to happen before Donald Trump, the defendants, and the jury enter or exit the courtroom. And it also probably has a lot to do with the fact that they don't want us to see the jury members either.
Right. So let's talk about that. So when you're in the overflow room, they have TVs set up so you can watch the proceedings, including you could see the witnesses, the defendant, I'm assuming the judge. Tell me a little bit about how that looked from your perspective.
Sure. Yeah. Well, first of all, it's like 15 rows of 20 pews. They're like church pews, but unlike church pew, they have little butt separators so that you can't fall asleep, right?
Yep.
You have to just kind of sit there in your little butt pew. And then they have these three big screens. One of them's right in the front in the middle. One of them's kind of back to the left, a little bit further back. And one of them is a smaller screen back to the right. And on each screen, they have 4 different camera views. There's the view of the judge, there's the view of the witness, there's the view of the prosecution table, and a view of the defense table. And the defense table is at the bottom right. And also at the very bottom, it tells you what court you're in, and it says New York County Supreme Criminal, which is really funny, put right underneath Donald Trump. So I thought that it was like, yeah, he is a New York County Supreme Criminal.
So did they prevent you from having electronic devices? So it's not like you can whip out your phone and take a picture of that and share it on with the rest of us.
You can have your electronic devices, your laptop, your phone. You can live tweet, text, if you're not a member of the public. If you're a member of the public in the press overflow room, you cannot have any electronic devices out whatsoever. But nobody is allowed to take any pictures in the courthouse at all. And there have been a couple of incidents where people have almost gotten banned for life from the courthouse for popping a phone out and taking a photo. One member of the press told me a story about another member of the press who, separate and apart from the trial that was going on, just thought something cute, like somebody had cute gloves on or something, and took her phone out to take a picture, and she was tossed out of the courthouse.
And by the way, that's every courthouse that I know of. You're not allowed to take out your cell phone. As a matter of fact, there's usually signs on the door that say "turn off your cell phone." They don't even say mute it. It says "turn off"
Well, this
because you think you
overflow
might. Yeah.
this overflow room is an old court setting. So there's a bench and a gate, like the little
Yep. Good
wooden
to go into the well. Yep.
well. And but now it's all TV screens and it's specifically for that. But all the old signage is up, like police and attorneys in the front row only. That doesn't apply anymore, for example, because it's an old place where they used to hold court, and it may normally be used for that, and is just being used as a press overflow room for this particular event. I don't know if it's permanently a press overflow room. Probably not. When do you need
Probably not.
for the press in a New York courtroom? But it was fascinating. It was old government building, that old linoleum tile that's been waxed so many times. There's like stuff waxed into it.
I am intimately familiar. LA's Central Court, Stanley Mosque is really impressive that way too. It's pretty cool. I'm really curious though. So because you had a view of the defense table, inquiring minds, which is appropriate to say in this context, inquiring minds want to know, how bad was Trump's makeup and hair first? Let's start there before we get to him falling asleep.
Well, it was unremarkable, which made me think of what E. Jean Carroll had said when she was on the witness stand looking at him at the defense table, and said he was just this regular guy. He was just a regular criminal defendant. He wasn't larger than life. There was nothing impressive about him. He was just a small, regular criminal defendant sitting at the table. And that was true. No bigger or no more grandiose than Susan Nicholas, who sat 2 seats away from him. As you looked at him, on his left was Todd Blanche toward the center of the well, then Donald Trump, then Beauvais, and then Nicholas. And they all just, the four of them, like, I don't know what I expected to see, like that he would be larger than people physically. That's obviously not the case, but
he wasn't wearing his lifts in a noticeable way that day. I mean, isn't that what we've seen, is that he allegedly wears lifts to make himself look bigger?
But he was just a guy.
Oh, that's so fascinating. That's interesting. So when you were there on Monday, May the 13th of 2024, this historic day when Michael Cohen sat down for direct examination, Donald J. Trump, defendant in this criminal trial, did you see him fall asleep?
Yes, he was asleep.
Seriously?
He was asleep most of the time, Ethan.
No.
And here's the way I described it on my Substack. He had like this routine. I remember when I was a teenager or in junior high or whatever, and my mom would have to come wake me up for school like 5, 6 times, 7 times, snooze, snooze, snooze. And I had this routine down, trick her into thinking I was getting up. Like I'd hear her coming and I would start to move my feet a little bit, like to, I don't know, trick her. It was the dumbest thing. And I'd be like, yeah, no, I'm getting up. Look at my feet are moving. And then I would fall back asleep, and then we would do this over and over again. What Trump was doing is he had a couple different sleeping positions. One was his head back and his mouth open, like this. Another one was leaning way back, chin down, like. And then a third one was head on the shoulder. And what he would do is he's asleep, and then he would like wake up like this, and then he would make a face like he was paying attention. And then he would look left, and he would look right, and then he would nod off again. And he would do that over and over again. And it was obvious to me, someone who's tried to pull this trick in the past as a child, that he thought he was tricking us into thinking that he was awake, but he was asleep most of the day.
That's fascinating. Not surprising, just utterly fascinating. I know everybody has their opinions on what that means. I don't agree with those who are saying, well, only guilty people do that. I don't think that that's the case. In the case of Donald Trump, my opinion, and I'm curious to hear your rebuttal to this, my opinion is He literally thinks he's going to get away with this, and he doesn't care. And so why does he have to pay attention? I'm paying these fancy, expensive lawyers. That's their job. I'm just required to be here.
Oh, I
That's
came right backwards.
that's impressive.
I think he's falling asleep because he's not well.
I mean, that does seem like a real possibility as well. But I got to tell you, I have dealt with unwell people in courtrooms, and they don't go to sleep. This is not what happens. I've dealt with people who I believe have had mental illness on the other side, and they don't fall asleep. They still understand that, oh gosh, there's something going on here. I need to be paying attention. This is a bad idea if I let myself, whatever those are. That's fascinating that you think that it's the D word.
Speaking, I mean, there's a lot to be said for your theory too, that he just doesn't think that he's done anything wrong. You know what I mean? I mean, there's a lot of his behavior that hinges kind of on that. I mean, I just recently, there was some podcast that had like Sharon Stone coming on to read something, and like these super awesome celebrities coming on to read stuff. And I'm like, Daily Beans doesn't have anything like that. But Muller, She Wrote had the honey badger don't give a bleep guy come on and summarize the Manafort trial. And it was the same thing. Manafort don't care. Don't care. He's going to be pardoned. So so that I think was a big part of it. Like you said, did I do it? Yeah, look at that.
Great stuff. I mean, that's healthy. That should help stave off dementia, by the way, being able to do that left and right. I think that there's some science, some data that supports that. So, all right. And so we got the lay of the land from the defense, and bluntly, I'm not terribly interested in the prosecutors at this point. What was your feeling about Judge Maran? So many judges, they all have a different disposition. Each is a unique human being in their own right. I think people really get this stuff wrong about judges. It's not that they're this or they're that. They're still human beings. They're highly educated. They're, obviously they've either been elected, appointed, whatever that looks like in the jurisdiction, but they're generally, they know what they're doing. I'm not commenting on any specific district in the federal courts right now. Okay. So, but generally speaking, especially the type of judge that Judge Maran is, or Justice Maran, because he's a Supreme Court justice, which is the only state that has that completely upside down and backwards, but congratulations, New York. What was your feeling of like how he ran the court? I always think back to Judge Ito, and I get so frustrated because most judges don't run their courtrooms like Judge Ito did. What was your impression of Judge Maran?
He was notable in that he wasn't notable.
That's great. He didn't make himself the star of the show.
You barely noticed he was there. There would be sidebars sometimes. There would be objections that were either overruled or sustained, but he mostly, he was almost just like he wasn't there, which is, I prefer that, a judge to be like that. And he's always on time. Gets things going he's got good control of the courtroom, I guess is a good way to put that.
Yep.
And mercifully, he ends things on time every single time. And the press made note of that.
Yeah.
Like, whenever there was a break, they're like, oh, thank God, we need a break. It's a hard job being in there, especially if you're like live tweeting the whole thing. It's pretty exhausting to pay that much attention for so long. But he ends things on time, and the press was very grateful for that.
I think probably the jury too. So before we get to Michael D. Cohen, speaking of the D word, the jury, you didn't get to see the jury, did you?
No, we in the press room are not allowed to see the jurors. And it's kind of interesting. I mean, I know what the rules are and I know I need to follow them, but I don't really understand them. I don't know why there aren't cameras in the courtroom, because we aren't allowed to see the jury. They turn the video feed off when the jury comes in and out. But there are anywhere from 6 to 10 members of the public in the courtroom who can see the jury, along with everybody else in the press who's in the courtroom that can see the jury. So I'm not real clear on why we can't over in the overflow room, or why I should, when I say we, I mean the press that's in the overflow room, can't see the jury. I know that you'll remember during voir dire, at first, the media was putting out a lot of identifying information, not like names or addresses or anything, but this guy has an Irish accent and he works at a bar, and he's an investment banker during the day and has 2 kids. And people were these jurors' phones were blowing up. People say, "Hey, you're the juror. I recognize it's you." Blah 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 from the description. And there was actually one juror, juror number 2, who dropped out because of that.
That's right.
Said, "I can't take all this recognition just from people describing through the press who I am. I don't want this heat." And I think that that's interesting that it was juror number 2, because the person who replaced juror number 2, when asked if who they follow on Twitter, said that they follow Michael Cohen and Muller, she wrote. So now that person,
Wait, say that again. Who did the juror follow?
that person,
I
the
love
person's
that.
in the box. That person's in the box.
That's
And
great.
so, there was a lot of discussion today, and I know we're going to get into this a little bit more, about Lena Haba wrote a note and gave it to Blanche, and she got in trouble for that.
Yeah.
And somebody on, I think it was CNN, was commenting that there are jury consultants who will watch the jury like a hawk, and if they see, like, if Michael Cohen says, "Yeah, I got out of prison early because of COVID," and a juror goes like that, they'll take note of that and say, this juror hates it when Michael Cohen talks about getting out of prison early. And then that tells the defense to hammer on that, because
Right.
all you need is that one juror to hang the entire jury. And so I thought to myself, when they were talking about that, another pundit brought up the fact that Weisselberg wasn't there today, and we can talk about that a little bit if you want. But somebody had mentioned, these jurors probably don't even know who Weisselberg is, let alone the fact that he's in prison for lying.
Yeah, that's right. They probably don't. There's a handful that do. Yes, Allison Gill.
There's probably one that does.
Well, I mean, so that was, I've had a number of conversations here on Really Legal, specifically about how we do jury selection and what we look for, and why I think so many people, and including, look, jury consultants, there are really good ones and there are not really good ones, like so many things in life. But also, nobody has all the answers on how to pick a jury. I'm sorry, I know people who claim that they do. Nobody's perfect at it, because each of those people who are jurors, remember, they're people, like judges, like prosecutors, like defendants. We don't know what their motivations are for sure. We don't know all of that. And there's no way to know all of that ahead of time as we're picking the jury. But I have a bone to pick with you, Dr. Gill, about something. I wanted to know, I believe, and correct me where I'm wrong here, that you think that it was okay for the press to report what was in front of them about the jury. So we go back to juror number 2, for example, and you defend that and say, tell me in your words, because then I'm going to argue the other side.
Well, if you're a reporter and you're listening to an audio stream, you're going to live tweet out or report or transcribe everything that's said, because it's said. I don't think you can fault the reporters for that. Once this happened with the juror, the judge then said to the press, "Stop doing that," and the press stopped doing it.
Right.
I think that it's probably on the judge to make those instructions clear at the beginning, or on the prosecution team to say, "This jury questionnaire, we don't think it should be answered publicly because it could give away clues as to who these people are." I don't think it's on the media.
So now I'm going to counter on this one. Respect your position, and I disagree with it. I'm going to use 2 simple examples. One, do we name rape victims? No. We keep that private until there's a reason to release the information. Same with children. We keep their identities private. The media makes this choice. It's not a court order that says that. It's the media has made that choice. And now I'm going to go with my third. Sorry, I said 2, and now I'm going to go with 3, since I just said sexual assault, rape victims, children. The other thing, like when I was a talk radio host for many years, I always had a very simple rule. I would say the name one time and I would never say it again. So you can do something where, to your point, maybe I live tweeted something, but every one of the major media stations didn't just have their reporters live tweet something about the juror. They put it in print. They put it in their summary articles. They had whole articles going through, oh, juror number one, this, we know about them. Juror number two, we know these 6 demographic facts about them. I believe when you're dealing with a trial that has an unbelievable track record leading up to this trial of supporters of this defendant committing violent acts in his name. By the way, I myself, and I believe you have too, but I've received legitimate death threats from Trump supporters, where the radio station I was at, there were security changes implemented because they deemed one of the death threats I received, only one, 99% of them are keyboard warriors that are just being stupid. But there was one that they determined to be legitimate. We had to change security. So I know what this is like to receive the wrath of Trump supporters who threaten. And I believe that the press knew all of this. We know about January 6th. We know about people who have done and committed and intended to commit violent acts on behalf of Donald Trump. They made a choice. They could have not released that demographic data. They did. And they waited for a judge to say, don't do that again.
But it wasn't like they got their names or address, hair color or height.
Yeah, but we know this. We know this now that with enough data, I can triangulate this down. And,
right. And I would expect the prosecution and the judge to know that, but I might not expect the media to know that. And I think it's the job of the prosecution and the judge to protect the jury. I get what you're saying.
Yeah, no, that's okay. And we don't have to agree on it. And it's okay. And I think that this is why we have, I think you and I both share this value very much, which is healthy debate is so important. It's absolutely missing from the majority of what we do now. It started getting squeezed out in 2018. Some can go back, to the end of the fairness doctrine. But in modern times, really, even I was going on Fox News as the liberal for a very long time. That has ended. Yes, they still have Jessica Tarlov, but there is nowhere near as much debate, whether you're talking about MSNBC debating, because we're now in the post-fact era with politics, at least from one of the two major parties and the supporters of that party. And so it's so important to model for people how to actually disagree about something. So I love that we disagree about something, and I respect you and respect your position.
Well, there are a lot of people who are getting that audio feed that aren't familiar with that don't know that. Like me personally, I never give a gunman's name or a perpetrator's name because I don't want them to
the notoriety
get notoriety for it. And I always make sure to do that. But like when that voir dire was coming out and people were live tweeting exactly what was going on, I was retweeting that. It didn't occur to me that these people could be identified by these characteristics. And once the judge was like, you guys got to stop that, I was like, ooh, yeah. And then I undid my retweets.
Yeah.
But, I think the judge and the prosecution probably should know that better than.
I do agree with you on that. And I'm not specifically picking on, again, the people who are live tweeting or you retweeting somebody. I'm picking on the editors. And I mean that. So at the Washington Post,
there wasn't even enough time for anybody to think about it.
No, but I'm not just talking about the live tweets, which I still disagree with live tweeting that out, but the editors, when they compiled these articles after the fact.
Right. Gotcha.
You're memorializing it in a way that's very different from a live tweet that I can delete. And yes, I know tweets live forever, blah, blah, blah. Let's talk about Michael D. Cohen for a moment, since you were there on the direct examination of him. And everything really, I don't want to say everything because, Mr. Pecker from the Inquirer was an important witness in all of this. I believe Stephanie Clifford was a minor witness in this, other than there were certain key facts that had to be established, and I think that she established those, and David Pecker established those, and there were other foundation witnesses that I think were really important in some of this. But Michael Cohen, he's the center of the universe of this case. And if the prosecution, or if he is not convincing to the jury, and or he collapses on the cross and is not able to be rehabilitated in the redirect, how did you feel about it? I mean, again, I only read, right, what happened with Michael Cohen. You were there observing it in real time. What was your impression, and what were your key takeaways of Michael Cohen?
I thought, and my feelings about it were later sort of bolstered by all of the press kind of talking about this later on. I know I talked to Jennifer Rubin about it. I know I spoke to a few people in the elevator. We all were kind of saying the same thing. How humble he seemed compared to when we have personally spoken to him in the past. He seemed humble and calm. Like, it seemed to me that he has been working on that. Do you know what I mean? Like, putting an effort into it. And it's the way that the prosecution set this case up, brilliant, by the way, because you've got, kind of a big witness, couple of document witnesses, kind of a big witness, couple of document witnesses, all that were setting up corroboration of what Michael Cohen was going to say. The entire thing that Michael Cohen was testifying to, all of it's corroborated by everybody else except one piece of key evidence. And that's what you have to believe Cohen on. And that is that Donald Trump approved the repayment of the $130,000, approved the grossing up of the $130,000, and approved for Weisselberg to call these retainer payments instead of what they truly were. That all happened in like a meeting, right? But everything else, every other witness, what they said is exactly what Cohen said. That was all corroborated. And that's when the big payoff comes, when they ask Cohen about that meeting with that smoking gun document with Alan Weisselberg's writing on it. 130,000 times 2 grossed up for taxes, literally written in black and white, plus 60,000. We learned what the 60,000 was. Michael Cohen was mad because he got like 1/3 of his bonus that he was expecting in December of 2018. He had just done this. He had just taken out the HELOC loan, to pay this for Trump, expecting to be paid back. So that 60,000 is in there, plus another 50,000 to Red Finch for tech work. And surprisingly, when I think it was Hoffinger asked him about that, she said, without going into any detail, what's this other $50,000? And the reason that they don't want him to go into any detail is because that $50,000 was paid out to a tech firm to help rig polls for Donald Trump. Donald Trump didn't like the results, refused to pay them, right? But Cohen wanted to get them their money.
Right. And remember, so this is the key with evidence of what you just described of why that wasn't brought up and was probably objected to by the defense and discussed prior to anybody. It's not probative, and it's not necessarily relevant. So
it's pretty prejudicial too.
That's
like, you were trying to rig polls. You paid people to rig polls. And in fact, resulted in Michael Cohen giving $12,000 in cash and a signed boxing glove and a Walmart plastic bag to the guy from Red Finch.
It's a mob story, right? I mean, I know everybody keeps talking about that. I know our friend Greg Oliar likes to talk about that as well. And but it's so bizarre to think about. But going back to your point here, Cohen kind of buttoned it all up right near the end of his testimony, didn't he?
Yeah. I mean, I did this at the direction of and for the benefit of Donald Trump. And that, when Weisselberg wrote that, I wrote my thing and we signed it. Trump was in the room and Trump approved all of that. The grossing up, the 130 times 2, the 60,000, the 50,000 Red Finch thing. Like, he approved all of that to get to the 420.
And what did you just say?
To get to the 420,000.
Oh, sorry. You said 420. And I was like, hey, California, we've legalized it. So congratulations. And didn't President Biden just announce that he's decriminalizing it essentially too?
Well, not full decriminalization. He's moving it schedule one to schedule
All
3.
right. Sorry. Separate topic. All right. But Michael Cohen said that. And I know that you and I both have our personal feelings about Donald J. Trump. I have no feelings about Michael Cohen. I mean, I've never talked to the man. I've only tweeted at him saying, please shut up. I mean, did he come off to you, if you can put yourself in the shoes of a juror for a moment, did he come off to you as believable?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. And that's because of the way the prosecution set this up, because everything he testified to until the big important things that only he can testify to, everything that he talked about has been corroborated by David Pecker, Stormy Daniels, Gina, the documents witnesses, the Verizon people, like all of it was corroborated. And so when you got to that big question, he was very believable, and his humility kind of also assisted with that. And regardless of what I think of Michael Cohen, I would say if 5 being totally neutral, 0 being don't like the guy, 10 being love the guy, I'm like around a 3 or a 4, but that he was completely credible to me. And I believed everything that he had to say. I believe he's truly sorry. I believe that a lot, he took the HELOC out because that was a paperless billing thing that he had, and he was trying to hide it from his wife. I believe that. I believe that his wife and daughters were like, "Why are you loyal to him? We're your family." And I believe he had that change of heart. I really do. And despite the fact that he's a convicted perjurer, despite the fact of his taxi medallion business and his tax schemes and all that stuff, I really do. I believe him on this important point. So, I think that he came across as very credible. And to your point with, stop doing the TikTok videos, man. That's what Blanche opened up with in the cross, went right at that jugular. But then it fizzled off and got confusing and had no purpose. And there's a reason for that. It's because they don't know what their defense is. Because Trump says the defense is that I never had sexual relations with that woman. That's what he wants the defense to be. But it's hard to argue that affair never happened.
Well, when it becomes irrelevant whether or not the affair happened because, yeah, go ahead. Sorry.
Well, a good defense here would be, yes, the affair happened. Sure, I wanted to cover it up, but I had no control over how Weisselberg handled that.
That's right.
But you can't make that argument if you deny that the thing ever happened in the first place.
So this is the problem. I've mentioned this more than once, I believe, on this show, is this is the problem sometimes. And you have a client like a Donald Trump who wants to tell the lawyer how to do everything. I'm not picking on any one of his lawyers at this point, because you're dealing with somebody where you know that they're saying things in court just for their client. The problem is your legal strategy should never be because of the client. That's the lawyer's job, is to do the legal strategy. And
somebody described it as rudderless.
Yeah.
And that is 100% because Donald Trump is the client.
Exactly. But by the way, I know how I would impeach Michael Cohen. I'm obviously not going to share it because I don't want anybody on the Trump team to even get, you know what I mean? It's like, I'm not giving them anything. It's like,
if it were chronological, it might have made a little bit more sense. I did think coming out and striking at him about his TikTok videos was probably a good idea, but not by quoting him calling me and my client names. I think that's wrong, because we're just all laughing at that point. Did you call him a douche dictator or what? And you're just like, why?
And the jury's smart. So I love to pick and say people are stupid sometimes, right? There's so much data on this. There have been studies done. Jurors who might have a bias, right, coming into something, maybe they like Donald Trump coming into it. Maybe they don't like Donald Trump coming into it. The overwhelming majority of people who serve on juries take the job seriously. Mm-hmm. And so if you're taking the job serious, you're going to see through That exactly what you just said. Did you call him this? I, I know what you're doing there, Mr. Attorney, defense attorney. And it's not going to work because I'm trying to figure out, do I believe Michael Cohen or not? And if I do believe Michael Cohen, doing that actually forces that I believe him, because you're doing a child playground type game of trying to make me not believe him because, oh, he's a bully. Michael Cohen's not a bully. Michael Cohen had an ego. All the other witnesses seem to say that they didn't particularly like Michael Cohen.
Well, he did say that he bullied people a lot and lies and stuff.
I mean, I get that, right? But in terms of TikTok name calling, I mean, really, that's not a big deal. Okay, I want to get to one other thing before we go. I know you have a busy schedule. I have a busy schedule. I'm so thankful to have your time, as you know. The way down the elevator as you were leaving. So Judge Merchan's like, okay, everybody go home. Did you guys like bum rush the elevator to get out? How did that go?
Yeah, it's quite a wait to get out of there. There's a couple hundred journalists who are starving, and because you aren't allowed to have snacks.
Oh, no.
No snacks anywhere in the courtroom. You can have water.
Oof.
And
they don't want a mess.
But they have a mess because there's gum stuck all over these 800-year-old wooden benches, and you can still kind of smell the cigars and cigarettes that have seeped into the walls over the years. Mm-hmm. But yeah, it's a rush to get out of there. Everybody's really nice, though. It's truly incredibly professional group of kind people.
That's good. I am glad to hear that, though, because there are times and places in the media business where people can be really unkind, right? Because they feel like everything's a competition. And so they take it very seriously, and they can be unkind and unhelpful. I love that the people that you were interacting with were kind.
Oh, so great. And it just blew my mind to be in the front row of that. I was sitting amongst a bunch of people from the Times and me. Like, it was just, it was mind blowing. It was like when I got into the January 6th hearings. I was in the front row for a lot of the January 6th hearings. I was, every once in a while you're like, how did I get here? But I'm very thankful.
Yeah, that's so cool.
The reason that I was able to get there is to all the people who have supported my shows and my stuff over the years and believe in me. And all the members of the press who were just so happy to see me there. We're so glad you're here. It was just really, I won't forget it. But, that to see that document with the grossed up ×2 for taxes, I sent a tweet on August 23rd, 2018. that said, I'm sorry, no way 130,000 turns into 420. You're making hush money payment.
Oh my gosh. That's unreal. I've said this before. I think the misdemeanor, right? The basis of falsifying business records, I think that's almost an easy win. It's convincing the jury, right? And Michael Cohen did the testimony now. And I think that the odds are, at least what I'm seeing thus far as of today, I think the odds are in favor of the prosecution. I'm not going to say anything stronger than, it's tilting in favor, because remember, it's beyond a reasonable doubt. This is a criminal trial, not a civil trial. And so that is a high hurdle to overcome to prove the intent to commit the other crime. Many of you think it's obvious. You always give that to me in my comments below. And I get that. I get that as a layperson. But it's really hard in court to prove, I believe, the second level. I think it's easy to prove the misdemeanor part. Yeah, that business record.
I thought that the underlying crimes didn't have to be proven beyond a reasonable doubt or even charged.
It's the intent. It's the intent. But the intent has to be proven.
No, the intent to cover it up.
But with the purpose of violating one of the three laws. Right. So you don't have to prove that the laws were
with the purpose of concealing, the intent to conceal that you've committed one of those three violations.
That's right. But again, it's mens rea is the goofy legal term, right? And a scienter is another term that we use in different parts of the law. But mens rea is I had to have that thought process, not just that I'm going to have a fraudulent business record. It's that I had to have the thought process that I'm concealing with the intent to commit this other crime, to cover up that we might be. You're right. I don't have to prove the elements of that additional crime, violating tax law, violating New York election law, violating federal election law. Those were the three that the prosecution stated. But it's still that mens rea. And that's the hardest part with a jury, right? The simple facts of, yeah, you falsified a business record. I think that's pretty easy here. But the mens rea, it depends on your jury. It depends on the believability of the Michael Cohens and the David Peckers. And, and I think that's, to me, that's the hard part in this case. Mm-hmm. And I think it's tilting in the prosecution's favor, but the defense hasn't put on their case in chief yet either. So I don't know what they're going to be able to pull out that might change this balance where we are right now.
Yeah, well, I think the prosecution's doing a better job. But for me, there's no way to know what any juror might think. So I can say the prosecution put on a much better, after it's all said and done, I can say that I think the prosecution did a much better job for XYZ, and the defense didn't do a great job here, here, and here. I give the defense a D, and I give the prosecution an A-, right? But none of that matters if one juror isn't on board.
Yeah, and that's key in a criminal trial. Yeah, that again, that's why I can't say it more. So I know that there are people.
I'm 100% certain there won't be an acquittal.
I can't say I'm 100%, but I'm in the high 90s, right? But I get why people make strong statements of, oh, the prosecution won this case, right? I mean, that's how we drive traffic. But it's steep, and for criminal, we make it intentionally difficult. Our judicial system is set up to make that hard to convict on a criminal, because you're losing your liberty. You're going to be behind bars. You're going to be in jail, even if you're Donald. What's the J stand for again? Do you have any good?
Well, I know what it actually stands for. But I think the real losers today were the American people, because we had to see the second in line to the succession of the president show up and defend Donald Trump.
That was, sorry, that makes me so unhappy to see his surrogates doing what Trump can't do because he'll violate the gag order. And it's done, to your point, gosh, this makes it so angry, because it's done. They're so obsequious. They're prostrating themselves. Okay, not literally. Figuratively prostrating themselves before Donald Trump and kissing.
They're also denigrating their positions in government. They're denigrating the position of the Speaker of the House. They're denigrating governorships. They're denigrating being a representative in Congress. I mean, they do a really good job of that in Congress.
I mean, House of Representatives in particular has been known throughout American history to do things that are truly embarrassing. But that was so grotesque to me today, where, look, I understand that politicians are seeking power and position and influence and money. And I get it. I don't have to agree with it. Don't blame the player, blame the game. But they've created a whole new game here that is reprehensible. I mean, it's even if I was a Republican, right? Just if I were to say that, right? I'm not. But if I was a Republican, like I look at Joe Walsh, right, who was a Republican, he ran for president as a Republican. He tried to take on Donald Trump. I know Joe Walsh. He talks about how grotesque this is. It's just because anybody who has half a brain realizes that's banana republic garbage. This is not, yes, an American company trying to usurp the government of a Central American country. We're doing it to ourselves right here. That's just beyond belief.
It was gross. So hopefully the prosecution will continue to do a wonderful job. We'll see how the rest of the cross goes. Michael Cohen is the final witness for the prosecution. I don't know that the jury will get this case before Memorial Day, but I think we'll have a verdict.
It is Memorial Day.
I think it's the 24th. But we should have a verdict by next month, or around that time. And my main concern is if there is that one jury and one juror and the jury is hung, that Donald will trot it out as a complete and total exoneration and a
Oh,
victory. And then that actually could help propel him to the White House, given that we probably won't have another trial before the election. So,
yes, we'll have that conversation in another interview. Oh, by the way, I have to give one quick shout out. Part of the reason I was fascinated with the elevator. Have you ever seen? I've met with, and I consider him a friend, Claude Taylor. Do you know who he is? Mad Dog Pack on Twitter. And they put up those crazy great billboards that he does. He has a picture of him in an elevator with like Jacob Wall and whatever that other guy's standing behind him, and he's got on like his Tommy Bahama style shirt, and those two look so uncomfortable behind him. And that is one of my all-time favorite pictures. Now, Allison, you're going to have to come up with an elevator pic of like everybody smiling as opposed to Jacob Wall. I mean, if you can get one with Donald Trump and Jason Miller, I think that'd be awesome. If you smiling and, you know, maybe your middle finger goes up, but that's a different.
I don't want to be in a contained space with that man.
Either one, right?
Way.
I mean, I don't have to say anything about Jason
Miller. An abortion pills smoothie or a nose full of weird farts, and I don't want either of those.
That sounds horrible. Yeah, I agree. I totally agree. You don't need that picture. How about a good one with, you know, you have a picture with President Biden, don't you?
Somewhere, I think. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
We got to find that. I love that you've been invited to the White House. I think that's amazing. So hang on a second. Jack is a once a week show that you do with Andy McCabe, right? And it's I've said this, I'm going to say it again. That's the one. I don't listen to a lot of podcasts. I listen to that podcast and I actually listen to it in its entirety. I think it is one of the most brilliant pods in existence. And that's your show. You have Daily Beans, which is 5 days a week. And then Cleanup, on aisle 45 that you do with Pete Strzok. That's weekly as well, right?
Yep.
At Muller, She Wrote. I'm trying to think of where else we need to be. And your Substack. What's the name of your Substack?
It's called The Breakdown. It's at mullershewrote.substack.com.
Thank you. Dr. Allison Gill, have a wonderful time in New York. Stay safe. Be well. We'll talk to you next time.
See ya.
Appreciated that interview as much as I did. We'll have Dr. Gill back on sometime here in the near future. And make sure to follow her on Twitter at Muller, She Wrote, and everything else as we've already discussed. So the good, the bad, and what's next. The good is Michael Cohen gave the testimony needed really for the prosecution. I think it has come full circle for the prosecution. They have done what they needed to do. Simple. The bad. We're not quite done yet with cross-examination of Michael Cohen. Defense theoretically could pull something out of their butt, and or the redirect by the prosecution could be problematic. Also, what's bad is we really don't know what the defense is going to do. I don't think that they have a lot of good strategies. It's really more about poking holes in the prosecution's case. So what's next? Well, court is off on Wednesdays. They'll be back on Thursday on May the 16th, 2024, continuing with Michael Cohen. Then the prosecution will wrap their case in chief, and then we'll get to hear the defense's case in chief next. Oh, goodness. Please give me your comments below. Did you enjoy the interview? What do you think about Michael Cohen? You know how much I love your comments, at least when you're on point. Yeah, sometimes when you're off point, I still enjoy them very much. Click that like button, smash the subscribe button. Really appreciate you. Please share this video far and wide. And I'll talk to you next time. I'm attorney Ethan Bearman. This is Really Legal on the Really American Network.